Research is a broad term, but in an academic context, it refers to finding out what no one else knew. It is the active, systematic advancement of the frontiers of human knowledge. To operate on that frontier, you must separate the objective, the act of discovery, from the research methods, which are the structural techniques used to reach that discovery. Methods provide the ways to collect, sort, and analyze information. Without them, a researcher is like a carpenter who understands the concept of a building, but has never learned to use a chisel or a drill. These methods establish validity. They provide the evidence that the new knowledge you have created is structurally sound and believable to others. To master these tools, we will map the entire architecture of academic inquiry, moving from basic investigative objectives to complex structural designs. Without sound methods mapped to an appropriate research design, the resulting data is compromised and the knowledge is invalid. Every research project begins with an objective on a progressive scale of complexity. First, categorize, sorting concepts into distinct sets. Next, describe, using observation to establish predictable norms. Explaining then requires interpreting the human and social context, giving meaning to raw data. Once a baseline is established, researchers can evaluate, making absolute or comparative judgments about the quality of those objects or events. Similarly, the objective to compare examines two or more contrasting cases to highlight specific similarities and differences, building a deeper understanding of the phenomena. Observing describes the present state, but it doesn't reveal the hidden mechanical forces driving it. To understand those forces, we move to advanced relational objectives, the search for pure physical cause and effect. The first of these is to correlate. Here, researchers investigate the relationship between two phenomena to see how they influence one another, measuring their exact level of association. If a strong relationship is proven in the past, researchers can use it to predict. They establish that, under similar circumstances, those characteristics will lead to predictable outcomes in the future. This leads to the ultimate objective, control. By identifying precise cause and effect relationships, a researcher can manipulate the specific variables required to change a situation. This tier of inquiry focuses on identifying the specific levers required to determine a project's results. Once you determine your objective, you select a research design. These macro frameworks dictate which specific methods are appropriate for your problem. A historical design aims at the objective evaluation of past events using primary data. This requires carrying out tests to check the strict authenticity of documentary sources and archaeological remains. A descriptive design establishes current norms through multimodal observation. Depending on the information needed, it relies on interviews, questionnaires, visual records, and even recording specific sounds and smells. A comparative design is used when the researcher has no control over events. It relies on analogy, identifying similarities between parallel situations to predict results based on shared characteristics. These frameworks provide a rigid architecture for observation, ensuring that data pulled from a chaotic natural environment remains analytically sound. When a project requires investigating complex relational and causal statements, researchers deploy correlation and experimental designs. These rely on the strict isolation of variables. In a causal statement, the independent variable is the cause manipulated by the researcher. The dependent variable is the observed effect. The association is measured as a positive, negative, or zero correlation. When true experiments are impossible to run at scale, researchers use simulation design. This creates an artificial representation of a system that can still be manipulated to gauge effects. These models can be mathematical, relying on number crunching inside a computer, or physical, using three-dimensional materials to test what-if situations. The isolation of variables is what distinguishes a controlled experiment from raw observation, providing the empirical weight needed to support a theory. Isolating a variable requires a sterile environment. When you investigate complex social realities, removing the context can destroy the integrity of the data. Action research is an on-the-spot procedure designed to deal with specific problems. Changes are applied, and effects are monitored and evaluated in a continuous loop. Ethnological research takes place in undisturbed natural settings, focusing on how subjects interpret their own behavior. It treats the cultural background and environment as a critical component of the data. Perspective-driven frameworks like feminist design operate on the premise that absolute value neutrality is impossible. These methodologies are informed by theories of gender relations to identify and transform those dynamics. Cultural design analyzes human communication by treating media and social interactions, from TV news to cocktail parties, as texts for semiotic analysis. Arts-based design uses narratives, poetry, dance, and film to communicate the emotional aspects of human life, challenging stereotypes and portraying multiple meanings. In the social sciences and humanities, the researcher's interpretation and the environment itself are not contaminating factors. They are essential to proving validity. When we see the full scope of this architecture, it reveals a complete taxonomy linking basic objectives to complex designs. This creates a linear decision matrix. Your interest dictates the research problem, the problem dictates the structural design, and the design dictates the methods. Mastering these frameworks is a practical requirement for solving logistical problems and advancing your field. Executing this sequence efficiently in a dissertation or thesis stands as evidence of your highly developed skills and intellectual character. Research is the blueprint for understanding. It is the systematic process of turning the unknown into the known. By aligning the right problem with the right paradigm, a researcher moves beyond observation and contributes directly to the frontier of knowledge.